In the early hours of a quiet Saturday morning, as the city gently awoke, Alexandra Monroe enjoyed rare moments of complete solitude in her modest but cozy apartment in a quiet suburb of a major American metropolis. The sunlight, filtering through the light curtains, illuminated the room with soft golden glimmers, creating an atmosphere of intimate silence and gentle anticipation of a new day. Sitting by the window, Alexandra watched as the world outside gradually came to life. The soft rustle of leaves, the distant hum of city traffic, and the gentle chime of early morning sounds merged into a harmonious symphony. For her, these moments became almost sacred, a time when she could disconnect from the endless hustle and look within herself, recognizing every seemingly insignificant feeling. Her thoughts, like gentle waves, spread out and returned, as if inviting her to deep self-analysis. Every touch of the cool glass, every shadow cast by the sun's rays, echoed in her soul with remnants of long-forgotten dreams and secret desires. Alexandra slowly and consciously ran her hands over the various textures of her surroundings, from the softness of a cozy blanket to the smoothness of the pages of an old book on the shelf, feeling how each movement filled her inner world with new colors. In this solitary ritual of self-exploration, she allowed herself to be completely genuine, without masks and conventions, with each breath revealing her true essence. In her heart, a quiet but irresistible desire grew to know herself deeper, to understand how even the most mundane moments could become revelations, giving strength and inspiration. Sitting in silence, Alexandra reflected on how rarely in the modern world one can stop and listen to one's own breath, to the pulse of one's soul. Here in this small oasis of tranquility, she felt her inner world filling with sensual energy, as if life itself invited her on an invisible journey through the labyrinths of memory and dreams. Each moment was filled with the promise of change, a quiet harbinger that ahead of her lay discoveries capable of forever changing her perception of herself and the world. Thus, under the gentle morning light, Alexandra Monroe began her journey of self-discovery, a path full of subtle sensations, secret thoughts, and unfinished stories that were just waiting for their time to unfold in all their glory. In the midst of her deep inner immersion, when Alexandra Monroe was absorbed in her own thoughts and subtle sensations, a sudden knock at the door interrupted her world of tranquility and self-analysis. This sound, sharp and unexpected, made her heart beat faster, and her mind race with a whirlwind of anxiety and bewilderment. Each second seemed stretched out, and in the silence of her apartment, it sounded like a harbinger of changes she could not foresee. Under the sounds of the unfamiliar signal, Alexandra's inner world began to tremble with uncertainty. She was immersed in the study of the most intimate facets of her soul when the sudden intrusion disrupted the solitary symphony. With trembling hands and quickened breath, she approached the door, as if afraid to disturb the delicate boundary between her personal space and harsh reality. Every thought about who might be outside mixed with the feeling that her intimate moments were now the object of someone else's attention. When the door opened slightly, before her stood the figure of a stranger, a person she had never met before, but who seemed to appear just when her inner world was at its most vulnerable. His image was both ordinary and mysterious, a simple courier or a new neighbor whose gaze, filled with timid surprise, penetrated the depths of her recent solitude. The stranger lingered on the threshold in no hurry to break the silence, as if his appearance was not accidental but predestined. Alexandra froze in place, feeling how each moment was filled not only with fear of being discovered, but also with a strange anticipation of unexplored changes. Inside her, a battle raged between the natural desire to preserve her personal space and the intriguing call of the outside world, which now touched her soul. This moment, so sudden and unexpectedly sharp, awakened in her the realization that her familiar boundary between the inner and outer was on the verge of disappearing. The stranger, as if sensing Alexandra's inner turmoil, softly, almost uncertainly, uttered a few words of greeting. His voice sounded gentle, with a hint of shyness, but at the same time it conveyed sincerity and a subtle hint that this meeting could be the starting point for something new. His presence disrupted the usual silence, but not aggressively. It only gently intruded into her personal space, making her wonder how even a chance encounter could turn her inner world upside down. Thus, standing on the threshold of her intimate solitude, the stranger became a symbol of unexpected but fateful change. Alexandra, feeling her soul simultaneously aching from the loss of solitude and trembling with the anticipation of unexplored discoveries, realized that this moment would be a turning point in her life. The world, which until then had seemed so quiet and predictable, suddenly took on a new hue, where the boundaries between the personal and the public dissolved, leaving only a thin but tangible thread connecting her past with her future. After the stranger, like a quiet storm, dissolved into the twilight of the threshold, Alexandra was left alone with her new conflicting feelings. She sank onto the soft sofa in her room, trying to make sense of the storm of emotions caused by the sudden disruption of her solitude. In her chest, shame and secret excitement intertwined like two irreconcilable forces fighting for control over her mind and body. In the silence, broken only by her quickened pulse, Alexandra felt how every particle of her being reacted to the past moment. On one hand, shame burned brightly for the fact that her personal space had been unexpectedly and mercilessly invaded. She felt vulnerable, as if exposed in the most intimate corner of her soul. On the other hand, deep within her consciousness, something akin to genuine excitement smoldered, an almost imperceptible and forbidden secret that both enticed and frightened her. Thoughts swirled in her head, creating a labyrinth of conflicting signals. Her mind condemned the intrusion, reminding her of the boundaries of the personal and intimate, while her body seemed to respond to the unfamiliar touch of gazes and soft intonations, leaving behind warmth and a slight tingling. Every cell told her that in this meeting, despite the outward aggressiveness of the disruption, lay some opportunity for self-analysis and deep understanding of herself. Alexandra thoughtfully ran her hand over the table, as if trying to calm her inner turmoil. In her soul, a quiet discussion was taking place. The voice of reason insisted on condemning the disturbed peace, while intuition, like a gentle whisper, promised that even in the most embarrassing moments, one could find a spark of new strength and revelation. This struggle between shame and excitement seemed to her a mirror reflecting all her past fears and hopes for the future. She remembered the moment when the stranger's gaze lingered on her so long that it read something more than just a chance encounter. This gaze, filled with quiet longing and inexplicable tenderness, seemed to reveal a new facet to her, one where vulnerability turned into a mysterious call, awakening the desire to understand her true essence. The inner contradiction gripped her, forcing her to wonder, how could it be that shame and trembling and the desire to be open to this world coexisted simultaneously? In this intimate battle of emotions, Alexandra began to understand that every force, seemingly opposing her, had its own value. Shame reminded her of the need to protect her personal space, while excitement told her that even in disruptions of the familiar order lay the opportunity for personal growth. And so, sitting in the semi-darkness of her room, she felt how the thin line between fear and desire gradually blurred, making room for the quiet awakening of her true, multifaceted essence. This inner struggle became for her not just a reaction to the past moment, but the beginning of a long journey to self-discovery, a journey where every feeling, even a contradictory one, served as an important lesson on the path to accepting herself and opening new horizons of the soul. The light slowly filled the room, illuminating the shadows and giving everything a soft, almost unreal glow. The stranger who had just entered this intimate abode of self-analysis was in no hurry to hide. His presence, though it disrupted the usual silence, brought with it not aggression but a strange feeling, as if fate had prepared this moment for something greater. He gently approached closer, his gaze attentive and penetrating, as if trying to read every facet of her soul. After a moment of silence in which only the soft beating of Alexandra's heart could be heard, he softly, almost in a whisper, said, "You have grown into a beautiful young lady." These words, spoken with remarkable tenderness and sincerity, plunged her into deep thought. For Alexandra, this recognition was not just a compliment, it resonated in her inner world, making her feel that something within her had changed, that her secret experiences and inner turmoil found reflection in her outward appearance. "Perhaps I am beginning to understand myself better," she whispered, unable to hide the tremor mixed with slight uncertainty. Her voice was barely audible, but each word sounded as if this revelation was the result of a long, almost painful inner search. The stranger took another step forward, his eyes filled with quiet care and understanding, seeking an answer in her gaze. He continued, "Sometimes we need to see ourselves through someone else's eyes to realize how we are changing. Your experiences, your vulnerability, they make you truly alive." These words, filled with gentle wisdom, penetrated deep into Alexandra's heart. In them, she heard not criticism, but an invitation to dialogue, capable of dispelling fear and doubt. At the same time, she felt how her inner world, previously torn by conflicts between shame and the desire for freedom, began to take on new, deeper shades. "You speak as if you understand each of my feelings," she said, her voice still soft but filled with a sincere desire to be heard. "I am merely observing," the stranger replied, "and I see how your true essence awakens when you allow yourself to be open." His words were soft and enveloping, like a gentle touch that could dispel the fog of inner fears. At that moment, an invisible but tangible space of trust and understanding arose between them. The dialogue, which began with a simple recognition, turned into an exchange of thoughts and feelings, where each word, each glance became a bridge between two worlds, her inner world of self-analysis and the outer reality full of unexpected discoveries. Alexandra felt how her inner resistance gradually retreated before this gentle, unobtrusive dialogue. Her soul, filled with conflicting emotions, finally began to let go of the fears that bound her. And in this quiet conversation, she found not only solace but also an invitation to continue the journey through the labyrinth of her soul, where each new emotion could become a key to self-discovery and liberation. After the quiet but powerful dialogue with the stranger, Alexandra Monroe felt how long-suppressed feelings and desires within her began to awaken. In her soul arose a quiet but insistent call to change, a call that no longer required rejection or suppression. Now in the silence of her room, she allowed herself to look within as never before and accept that part of herself that she had long tried to hide. Remembering moments from her past, when the fear of judgment forced her to hide her true feelings, Alexandra realized that every emotion, even if it seemed forbidden or ambiguous, was a reflection of her deep essence. She understood that it was through this complex inner conflict that she began to gain strength. Meditatively running her fingers over the worn cover of her favorite book, she felt as if she was touching the pages of her soul, where stories of love, pain, and hope were written. That night, under the soft light of a table lamp, she sat down at her desk and began to write down her thoughts. Each line became a revelation for her, a confession that her desires were not something shameful, but on the contrary, a bridge to understanding her own identity. Alexandra wrote about her fears, about how difficult it was to come to terms with the fact that her inner world was so multifaceted and did not always fit into familiar frameworks. Over time, she began to see in these experiences not weakness, but a source of incredible strength. Reevaluating each moment, each inner sensation, she understood. True liberation comes when a person accepts all their parts, even those that previously seemed unacceptable. This awareness became a turning point for her when the pain of past reproaches and inner conflicts gave way to gentle acceptance and love for herself. The transformation happening within Alexandra was subtle and imperceptible, like dawn, when the first rays of the sun slowly dissolved the night's darkness. She learned to listen to herself, giving voice to every drop of emotion and every trembling desire. This inner dialogue, filled with sincerity and compassion, helped her find confidence in the fact that being herself meant being a full and complete person, regardless of what feelings flared up inside. In the process of reevaluation, she began to look at the world in a new way. Every touch, every breath became a reminder that true freedom lies not in denying one's feelings, but in accepting them. Alexandra realized that the path to self-discovery is a constant movement in which moments of doubt and inner struggle give way to the light of understanding and deep respect for one's essence. And in this silence, where once only the whisper of uncertainty sounded, now the confident, calm melody of acceptance resounded, promising new, brighter days. When the evening twilight slowly descended upon the city, Alexandra Monroe sat in her room, feeling how every particle of her soul more clearly took shape. The stranger, whose image dissolved in the shimmering twilight, left behind a quiet whisper of change, echoes of understanding that continued to resonate in her heart. His words, filled with gentle sincerity, like an echo, penetrated the depths of her thoughts, reminding her that every moment had its meaning, and every touch of fate was an opportunity for inner transformation. With her eyes closed, Alexandra allowed her thoughts to wander freely, like a gentle breeze blowing through an open window. In those moments, she felt that the path to self-discovery was not a one-time encounter or chance event, but a long, winding route where every stop, every meeting became a lesson. She understood her inner world would no longer be a prisoner of old fears and limitations. Instead, it was transforming into a quiet temple where every emotion, both joy and pain, found its place, giving rise to a new, more integrated personality. Alexandra's transformation was subtle, like the first rays of dawn when the night's darkness gives way to light. She slowly rose from her chair, feeling how every movement, from the confident glide of her fingers over the table to the light, almost imperceptible step across the room, symbolized her inner resolve and renewal. In her eyes, one could already discern the glimmers of confidence, and her heart, previously tormented by doubts, now beat with the steady and calm rhythm of a new beginning. The night enveloped the city with stars, and in this vast celestial dome, Alexandra felt that every moment of life was an opportunity to come closer to her true essence. She realized that vulnerability, once perceived as weakness, could actually give strength if accepted as an integral part of the journey. The stranger disappeared as suddenly as he had appeared, leaving behind a mysterious thread that she could now confidently follow into the future. In this decisive moment, when the night's silence allowed her to hear her own breath, Alexandra understood. True growth begins when we stop fearing our feelings and accept every facet of our personality. Without loud words or solemn promises, she smiled softly, knowing that ahead of her lay new encounters, trials, and discoveries capable of forever changing her life. Under the shimmering moonlight, with a heart full of quiet resolve, Alexandra Monroe embarked on a path where every moment promised to be a step toward freedom, the freedom to be herself, in complete harmony with all the shades of her own soul. This was not an ending, but merely the beginning of an endless journey filled with mysteries, sincerity, and hope for a brighter future.